Welcome, everybody, to another great episode of New York, California Dynasty Talk. So far, we've done quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, and what's left? Tight ends. And that's what we're going to be doing today. That's what we're going to be focused on. You have me, Mike Valverde, and my partner, Ralph Mancini. You can find him on Twitter at Reverend Ralph. So, Ralph, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. Let's tackle these tight ends.
Absolutely, absolutely. So the first question I have for you, not so much the rookies that we're going to cover, but the veterans. Two veterans in particular, David Njoku, who wants to be out and traded, and I don't blame him. And then secondly, you have the multi-concussed, often injured Jordan Reed looking to come back. I'm surprised by Jordan Reed. I think he should retire after all those concussions. But what do you make of both Njoku and Jordan Reed?
Well, as far as Njoku goes, I get the fact that, he wants to be featured in that offense. And right now, they spent a lot of money on Austin Hooper. They also drafted another tight end in Harrison Bryant. So he kind of feels that maybe he feels unwanted. I get that. However, what I don't understand is, why did he wait so long? I mean, it was just last week when he made this trade request. So you wait until July to make this trade request when, you could have spoken up a lot earlier. You could have spoken up as soon as the Browns made their move for Austin Hooper. So that's the part that I don't get. You're really not putting your team in much of a position to do much of anything as far as moving you to another franchise. And the other thing is that I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think that the Browns have any intention of letting him go because although they drafted Harrison Bryant, I think he's raw, and it's going to be a while until he gets ready to be a starter, or at least a semi-starter, or a guy's going to get a lot of snaps with that team. So with the new offense that they have there, I think that they're going to play with a lot of two tight end sets. Right. So they're going to need David Njoku out there. And he is a veteran. He's a guy who's coming off an injury-riddled year. But I think that he's got to think, I need to maximize my value for next year, because I don't think the Browns are going to keep him around. If everything works out the way they want it to be, if everything works out according to plan, I don't think the Browns are going to keep him around, because they do have a lot of hope in Harrison Bryant. That's why they drafted him where they did. And they do have a lot invested in Austin Hooper. But I think for the here and now, he's got to think, this is a business decision. I'm going to stay with the Browns. I'm going to maximize my value. And then I'm going to just go elsewhere. And he's very young. He's only 24 years old. So I think he needs to stay patient. He needs to maximize his value. And if he stays healthy, hopefully he'll get everything that he wants. But right now, there's just not enough time to trade him, and the Browns don't want to trade him. With Kevin Stefanski there, he needs a lot of tight ends in that offense, and he's going to lean on him. So he needs to stay patient because it's just not going to happen right now. As far as Jordan Reed goes now, yeah, that I don't get. I mean, this guy, I think now it's been about 7 concussions that he's had since 2013. And on top of that, he's also had various hamstring injuries, serious injuries that have kept him out for significant periods. As a matter of fact, over the past 4 seasons, he's missed 30 games. So I don't know what is leading him to put himself out there. And here's the other thing. It's like if the Washington Redskins, who just don't have a lot of offensive weapons as it is, if they don't want anything to do with Jordan Reed, if they happen to think he's damaged goods, then why would any other team invest in him? Maybe I could see the San Francisco 49ers bringing him in for, a minimum contract, a veteran minimum. Maybe he could play behind George Kittle. But I'm thinking that, he's a very young man. He's 30 years old. He's got his whole life in front of him. Why risk it? You already had 7 concussions. I mean, you don't want to be in a wheelchair, or you don't want to be incapacitated by the time you're 50 years old. So I would say, walk away and just be grateful that, you were able to do what you did. You've had a good 6-7 years in the league, and just walk away and just think about your future now.
Yeah, I mean, especially when you consider, I mean, if this guy doesn't have CTE, I don't know who does. Just with all those, and as we also know with concussions, once you have one, you have the ones you'll start getting them more and more and more. That you get them easier. So I really don't know what team would want to take a chance on that, or I don't know why in the world, unless it's money, why he would want to risk his health and his future with what he's dealing with. Now with Njoku, what teams do you see maybe if they do trade him? What teams do you think he could land on that would be beneficial for someone who's hasn't really made a name for himself or who hasn't lived up to the potential that the Cleveland Browns drafted him as?
Yeah, there are a couple of teams that have been thrown out there. I know the Redskins are one team that people have been mentioning, or the team with no name currently. Yeah. But I'm thinking like a team like the Patriots could use him. I'm thinking about a team like maybe the Buffalo Bills. The Buffalo Bills. They have Dawson Knox there, who's a promising tight end. But yet, I don't think he's a tight end one. I think he's more of a tight end two at this point. So if they bring Njoku in there, I think he'd form quite a team, quite a combo with Dawson Knox in that offense. And I think that team is going places. If they keep most of their key guys healthy. And the other thing you have to look at is what about the salary cap? They do have a lot of money to spend right now. So they're, as a matter of fact, I think in terms of salary cap dollars, Buffalo Bills are in the top 10. So it's a move that would make sense for them to bring in David Njoku, have him compete with Dawson Knox. Although I do think that a healthy Njoku is better than Dawson Knox. And the other tight end that they have there is Tyler Kroft. He's underachieved. He's been hurt. And so, I think that, Knox and Njoku would probably necessitate getting rid of Tyler Kroft. So I think that would be a great spot for Njoku.
Yeah, I can definitely say that because, as you mentioned, Kroft, I think he was an early draft pick too, second or third round maybe, and he hasn't lived up potential as well. Now, speaking of potential, how many of these tight ends that were drafted this year do you see being fantasy football relevant in dynasty leagues?
You mean in their rookie years or just overall
just overall in their career that you're going to say maybe 5 years down the line that he might not have been something, but is let's just say as a bottom. He might not have been something, but he contributed to the fantasy landscape. He was drafted. He was, that kind of thing.
I think I see about 5 or 6 guys who can be tight end ones in their respective offenses in time. Guys that I want to invest in for the long term. I think I see about 5 or 6 guys, no more than that. I don't think it was a great tight end class. No. So. But there definitely are a handful of players, I think, that have the ability to be versatile, and I think that's the key thing that I'd be looking for. If I was running a team, versatility is what I'm looking for in a tight end, and there are a few guys out there that can run routes, that have the size, that can block. Can line up in a lot of different positions. Those are the guys I'm looking for. Those are the guys that if I'm even building a fantasy team, those are the players I want to build my team around.
Yeah, absolutely. It seems like versatility is something that's really key with tight ends lately. They're very much a blocker and a receiver. They're not one or the other. What tight end of all the tight ends that were in your top 10 list had the best landing spot, you think?
Well, I think Albert O, and I have a hard time pronouncing his last name.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. Albert O is good enough for me.
Yeah, so let's just call him Albert O. I think he lands in a great spot just because he comes from Missouri, and that's the same school that his quarterback Drew Lock played in. So right off the bat, these two have some chemistry going on between them. And so I think that in that spot with the Denver Broncos, with all of the firepower they have at wide receiver, I think that Albert O, once they put him in that offense, he's not going to see any double teams. He's going to see a lot of favorable matchups. And really, I mean, who does he have in front of him? Noah Fant? I mean, quite frankly, outside of one or two plays, Noah Fant was largely a non-factor in his rookie year. And there's still a lot of questions with him. Is he physical enough? Does he run all the routes? I don't know. I haven't seen a lot out of Noah Fant right now. That makes me think that he would be a successful tight end one with the Denver Broncos. So I think Albert O, I mean, he's got a great opportunity, I believe, to really establish himself as a starting tight end.
Yeah, I agree. You know, I think a lot of people kind of tend to lend themselves to maybe Asiasi, New England, just because of how well Belichick uses the tight end and how much they use the tight end. But I see a change in offense as well. So it's like, okay, well, he is one of the better tight ends, but will this change of offense actually fit his, fit what we normally see out of the tight ends position? What do you think about that fit?
Asiasi, well, yeah, the fact that they have Cam Newton playing at quarterback right now, it just kind of confuses me a little bit about, how they're going to play, how they're going to utilize their weapons. But what you like about his situation right now is you take a look at the Patriots receiving core and, let's face it. I mean, there's really nobody there that scares you. I mean, when Julian Edelman is your number one receiver, this 34-year-old who gets hurt a lot, dropped a lot of passes last season, 11 passes. I think he led the league in that category. So yeah, he's still a good player, but he shouldn't be. I mean, if you're a top-notch, top contending team, I don't think Edelman should be your number one receiver. It doesn't profile as one anyway. And then you got Mohamed Sanu, who's far from explosive, coming off a year where he was hurt as well. And I guess N'Keal Harry is somebody that they're hopeful about, but even he is not a speed merchant by any stretch of the imagination. And then you got Jacoby Myers, who to me is more of a number 4 wide receiver. So I think Devin Asiasi, he lands in a situation where he could be a major part of that passing attack, and I believe that, with his skills, he's got the ability to make a lot of contested catches. He's a big kid. He's not one of these like long and lean guys. He doesn't have that basketball build. He's more of a stocky guy, right? Like 6'2", 6'3", maybe about 260 pounds, I would say. He kind of reminds me, if you go back about 20 or so years, kind of reminds me a little bit in terms of his physical stature of Jermaine Wiggins. Who had some good seasons with the Vikings and the Patriots way back in the day. So what I like about Asiasi is he does give you big playability. He averaged over 15 yards per catch at UCLA and in his last season. And the other thing is, as I mentioned, he's a physical kid. He gets off the line. He dips under guys. He's not afraid of going into congested areas. He makes a lot of tough catches. He's a physical guy. So whenever you need that 6 yards, it's 3rd and 6, you need 7 yards. I think that, he's a guy who knows how to get open, and he can bang. He can bang with some bodies in there.
And he is your number 2 guy. And number 1, Adam Troutman out of the small school of Dayton. He went to the New Orleans Saints. Jared Cook is on his way out. This will be his last year. What were those some of the contributing factors of why you made Adam Troutman your number 1 guy over Asiasi, or were there other reasons for it?
Well, yeah, there were other reasons for it. Adam Troutman, I think that when you take a look at upside, he's a savvy route runner. He's got easy movement about him. And he can also fluidly change directions in terms of running routes. He's one of these guys where he can plant his foot inside and then go to the outside and fake out defenders. He's hard to cover. And then the other part of his game that you like as well is that he's got the size and he shows the technique, or he shows the ability to get low and to block. So I think that when you put all of these skills together, the fact that you can line them up outside and throw him a fade route into the end zone as a big receiver, I think when you put all of these aspects, these characteristics together, I think Troutman, to me, presents himself as a type of versatile tight end that teams are looking for now. And as you said, Jared Cook, he's 33 years old, coming off a great season, scored 9 touchdowns, over 700 yards in 2019. But he's getting paid a lot of money. And so I can definitely see Troutman, if everything, he stays healthy, everything works according to plan. I can see Troutman stepping in and being that tight end 1 in 2021. Now, I can also see this being Drew Brees' last year. I would expect that, as a matter of fact. So who his quarterback is going to be, who knows? Could be Jameis Winston, could be Taysom Hill, could be somebody else. However, I do like Adam Troutman a lot. I like pretty much everything about his game, from his size, speed, route running ability, and his potential to be a good blocker as well.
Yeah, I'm surprised that the Rambo nickname hasn't gone with Adam Troutman, considering Troutman was, his military advisor. I'm waiting for those. Probably his first big play on the field. You're going to get some Rambo nicknames. So you have Adam Troutman number 1, Devin Aussie is number 2, and we mentioned him a little bit. Harrison Bryant from another small school, Florida Atlantic. He's your number 3 guy. Again, 2 tight end set, as we saw with Kevin Stefanski in Minnesota with Irv Smith and Kyle Rudolph. He's definitely going to bring that into fold. So if David Njoku is traded, Harrison Bryant will be that number 2 guy. What do you see out of him?
I see a big, long, athletic tight end, 6'5", 240. He is very good after the catch. I mean, you see some of the plays that he made over at Florida Atlantic. He is a guy that runs very smoothly, gets out of his breaks very fluidly. The one concern that I have, though, with Harrison Bryant is, and I watched about 5 or 6 of his games, is that he made a lot of those plays with nobody around him. He was running against air. And so in the NFL, he's going to have tighter coverage. He's going to be banging his body against other guys that were a lot stronger, a lot quicker, a lot more explosive. So I think that, his number 1 priority right now should be to get stronger, maybe put on a little bit more weight, some good weight. But here's the other thing. I also did see him play against Ohio State. And outside of 1 or 2 questionable plays, he looked like he could hang with pro-level defenders. So he looked like that, he did make 1 or 2 contested catches. So that gives me hope for this particular player. And the other thing is that he is raw as a blocker, So, if as we mentioned, Njoku ends up with another team in 2021, I picture Austin Hooper doing most of the blocking out of that duo, and Harrison Bryant being more of the kind of like the move tight end, the pass catching tight end. And so for fantasy purposes, this is exactly what you want. This guy's going to give you numbers. So I think that, he is one of these guys, man. You get him going, you hit him in movement. He is hard to stop in the open field. And so that's what I like about Harrison Bryant. I wouldn't expect anything out of him in his rookie year. And with the coronavirus going on, he's not really getting any real reps anyway. But I think in 2021, they're going to prepare this guy to be a key part of that offense.
And your number 4 guy, I was actually kind of surprised because a lot of people have him as a 1 or a 2 on your ranking list. So I wonder if you can go in a little bit about why he's your number 4, which isn't too far off, but considering 1 and 2 is usually where you find him. I'm intrigued by that. A guy out of Notre Dame where a lot of tight ends come out of, and now in Chicago with a bad quarterback, and maybe that has something to do with it, is Cole Kmet.
Well, I think that a lot of people, when they see that Cole Kmet was picked in the second round, they expect him to step in right away and be the man, or at least be the 1B to Jimmy Graham's 1A. But although Cole Kmet has got great size, 6'6", 262 pounds, and he could probably add another 10 pounds because he is long and lean. But the thing about him is that I see like certain things in his game that you would expect him, right? Everybody's talking about him. Oh, this guy's going to be the wide tight end. This is going to be the guy that could do it all. He can block. You can put him in there. But I saw some inconsistencies in his game, even as a blocker, in that his hand placement was inconsistent. He fell off a lot of his blocks. So I don't necessarily think he's a plug and play. I do think he's going to get some snaps. He's going to get opportunities. But, you know, if you expect him to be all world or to look or play like a veteran from the jump, I don't see that. I don't see that. And then when you talk about his upside 3 or 4 years from now, I do think that he's a tough guy. I do think that, you know, he adjusts to balls, bad balls well. I like that about him. And he's always aware of where his quarterback is. So he's a smart player. He's a tough player. But is he explosive? Like, to me, if I were to compare him to anybody, he's probably, I would say he's more similar to a Kyle Rudolph than he is to a Zach Ertz or a Travis Kelce. So, you know, he doesn't create a lot of separation in his routes, not very explosive. And then at times he reverts to being a body catcher as well. So I think that where he was drafted, I think with the Bears having a need at the position and Jimmy Graham probably only having another year left in the league, I think, yeah, that's a great spot for Cole Kmet. But is he ready? Is he ready to be that tight end one? Is he ready to assume a lion's share of snaps? I don't know about that. I do know that the Bears acquired Demetrius Harris in the offseason, and I think he's going to have a role with this team too. So I do think that Cole Kmet eventually will be the tight end one, maybe in a year or two. But again, you know, I don't think he's ever going to be like a real stud. He's like going to be a nice player, a good starter, but nothing that, you know, nothing like a Travis Kelce or Zach Ertz or, you know, one of these, you know, top tier tight ends. I don't see that in him.
So you probably see him, like, as you mentioned, Kyle Rudolph, where he does have good red zone skills and capabilities, but isn't going to wow the world with yards after the catch. It's going to be probably like 8 or 9 yards after the catch. So he might catch like 50 passes for like 450 yards, but score like 6 or 7 touchdowns kind of guy.
Right. And, you know, for fantasy purposes, that's not the type of guy you want to start every week. He's more of a bye-week fill-in or more of a person that you start if your top guy is hurt. But as far as being that every week starter where you just don't even think about it, you plug him into your lineup, I don't think he's that type of player.
Yeah, I could totally see what you're saying, especially when you made the comp with Kyle Rudolph, because he does look a lot like Kyle Rudolph. Someone that's going to make, you know, some short routes, catches, and drop some balls, but really shine when it comes to around the goal line area. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know what they're going to do with Jimmy Graham. I don't know if they brought in Graham to be more of the blocker, you know, even though he's always kind of struggled with that. And obviously Kmet struggles with the blocking, and you have, you know, not a very, I mean, I guess they're okay offensive line, and, you know, and then you got these bad quarterbacks. It just doesn't seem like it's lending itself to a very good situation for him.
No, I mean, I think what you do like about the Bears is they have a great defense, and that's not going anywhere. But I'm thinking that, you know, on the high end, I don't see them being more than an 8-8 type of team going forward.
Yeah, especially, I mean, as I was looking at it with the quarterback situation, you have Trubisky, who might start the season, but, you know, Nick Foles is going to take over at some point. And then, you know, Nick Foles is going to have 1 or 2 bad weeks, and then Trubisky's going to come in, And what kind of president are you really kind of setting for a rookie tight end when you're having these rotating quarterbacks in and out of the lineup and learning how to integrate with how they're throwing and all that, and then plus who knows if Foles or Trubisky will even be back next year. So then you're having another quarterback come in who's probably going to be a rookie. Yeah, I think I would say at least 2 to 3 years for Kmet to actually get any kind of return on investment. And then, as we've talked about, that's not even going to be very good because it's going to be more of a touchdown dependent kind of situation for him.
Right. And so I think that, as I said, sometimes we fall in love with, the fact that somebody was taken in the second round or he was taken in the first round. But we have to be realistic. Very few tight ends are going to have 1,000 yards. Very few tight ends will catch 10 plus touchdowns. Right. And so, and very few tight ends, are going to catch 80 balls, and so he's definitely not that. He's definitely not that, maybe, he can end up being a Kyle Rudolph or maybe a Dwayne Allen type or something like that. But there's a lot of development that needs to go on there before even that happens, I think.
And we did touch on your number 5 guy, Albert O, a little bit. Do you want to go into any more detail about?
Yeah, it's the thing I like about Albert O. I mean, and a lot of these guys that we mentioned, we talk about their upsides, right? 3 years from now, they're going to be great players. But what I like about Albert O is he was productive in college too. 23 of his 98 catches were touchdowns, resulted in touchdowns. So that this guy's going to be a factor in the red zone. Drew Lock looked for him a lot in Missouri on a lot of those corner routes, in the red zone. So I think that, when you have a guy like Cortland Sutton, 6'4", when you have Jerry Jeudy who can make plays at any part of the field, and then you put Albert O there who already has this rapport with his old quarterback. Wow. What a plethora of options. And if the Broncos don't take advantage of this aspect of his game, Albert O, to make these plays in the red zone, they would just be foolish. And the other thing is that, again, people seem to think that Noah Fant is going to rise up and have this breakout year. You know how many catches Noah Fant had last year inside of the 10-yard line? 0. He made 0 catches in that part of the field. So, this is what I love about Albert O. He's a physical guy. He's a big guy, 6'5", 260, and he's going to bang. He's going to get off tough coverage, and he's going to make plays in the red zone. So he might not ever have, big-time yardage, but even if he gives you, let's say 600 yards and 10 touchdowns, 12 touchdowns in a really good year, this is the type of tight end I want on my fantasy team.
Yeah, and I do like the fact that he played with Drew Lock, as you mentioned, in college, and that cohesion is so important, especially when you're talking quarterback, wide receiver, quarterback, tight end combinations. And I really also like his straight line speed. He has that great straight line speed. So I think all that fits in kind of what the Denver Broncos want to run. They want to run a lot of 11 personnel. But that also can lead into the tight end moving around like Albert O can. Have him go straight down the field, maybe run down the seam, run down the numbers, and then have that great connection with Drew Lock.
Yeah, absolutely. So I just love the spot. You're telling me, I think you were asking me before the show or off air, who do you think is going to be that tight end that bust out or the guy that you draft low and is going to give you maximum value? I think it's him. I think it's Albert O among the rookies. I think that, as the season wears on, I can see his role growing exponentially in that offense.
Yeah, and he is going as one of the last tight ends basically off the board. It's usually maybe Albert O or Thaddeus Moss, who we'll get into a little bit later, but you can basically get Albert O for free right now.
Yeah, that's great value.
And at number 6, a guy from Cincinnati, and maybe you can touch on why the Packers would draft Josiah DeGuara. I can't pronounce his name very well. Also to go with Jay Sternberger. What may be going on? Are they going to 12 personnel now? What's going on with Green Bay and tight ends?
Yeah, well, going into the draft, I know that Matthew LaFleur, his number one objective going into the draft was making the Packers more into a run-first team. Let's not forget, he coached under Mike Shanahan and he coached under Kyle Shanahan. And so, this is the type of offense that he wants. He wants guys who can block. He wants big running backs. He wants big plays in the running game. And I believe that with Jay Sternberger there, Sternberger showed the versatility to line up as an H-back and to block, and did it very well toward the end of last year and into the playoffs. But I think what they want out of Sternberger is they recognize that he has that athletic ability to run routes and to catch passes and make plays in the passing game. So in order to free up Sternberger to be that more traditional tight end, they brought in DeGuara to do more of the dirty work, to line up as a fullback, to line up as an H-back, to do a lot of the blocking. And this guy's very tenacious when it comes to that. Every play, you see him like he plays with his hair on fire. And I think they like that about him. So I think that, we talked about versatility. I think this guy does have that. And as far as him being a pass catcher, he's not just somebody who puts his hand in the dirt and blocks all the time. He's made a lot of plays catching the ball, a lot of over-the-shoulder catches. He's lined up, as a traditional tight end and run routes in that role as well. But I think that, and we talk about blocking, and people might think, well, why is blocking so important? This is fantasy football. This is all about numbers. Well, blocking is important because the better you can block, the more snaps you're going to see, the more time you're going to see on the field. And so this is why I like DeGuara. I think he's going to play an important role in the offense. I think he is, maybe he's not going to make a ton of big plays, but he's going to see a lot of checkdowns. And I think with the way he plays, with his tenacity, his strength, he's a guy that, he could take a 3-yard check down and turn it into a 15-yard play. So I think that in that offense with Aaron Rodgers, as long as he's still there for the next couple of years, I think that DeGuara is a solid guy, not necessarily saying that, he's somebody who, you're going to start, 5 or 6 times during the year. But I think just a solid guy. And if anything were to happen to Jay Sternberger, I think DeGuara is good enough to where, the offense really won't be limited all that much with DeGuara in there. So overall, I love his versatility, and I think this guy's going to be, health permitting, I think he's going to be with the Packers for a long time.
Now, do you remember where they drafted him or what round?
Yeah, in the 3rd round, which was a little high. I mean, I was okay with the pick. I totally, understood where they were going with that pick. But it seems that a lot of people, Packer fans and non-Packer fans, seem to think that they went a little high in selecting him in the 3rd round.
I see. But you feel like it was a pretty good or a solid pick at that.
I just think it's a great scheme fit. Okay. I mean, you might not think he's the most explosive guy out there, but right. A lot of times you have to look at scheme fit, and I think he's a perfect match for this team.
Sure. And when you're also drafting and you have a perfect fit for what you're wanting to do, maybe by the time that you pick in the next round or the next 2 rounds or wherever you're picking next, you might not necessarily see that guy available to you. So you do what's best for the team, and sometimes that means you pick someone a lot earlier than what normal people think he should go at.
Yeah, absolutely. And so. You take a look at the Packers right now. We mentioned Sternberger. They also have Mercedes Lewis, who is probably playing his last year, and he's a good mentor. He's a good blocker. He's a big, huge guy and all that. But, you could definitely see Mercedes Lewis moving on or even retiring next year. And then what do they have beyond that? Robert Tonyan. Tonyan is just, he's big and he's athletic, but he can't block. He's just a non-factor when it comes to that. So I could see DeGuara, the Sternberger-DeGuara combination being a very successful one for the Packers for years to come.
Was Tonyan the one that caught like that 80-yard touchdown pass a couple of years ago? I can't remember. It was like his only catch of his career was like an 80-yard touchdown pass from Aaron Rodgers.
I don't know if it was 80 yards, but yeah, he did catch a long touchdown pass. And, every once in a while, he'll come up with a play like that. But then I also see him where, when he tries to block a defensive end or an outside linebacker, he totally gets destroyed. So, yeah, he's not that type of complete versatile player that you want in there for a lot of snaps.
Gotcha. And then at 7, the next tight end that the Patriots picked up out of Virginia Tech, Dalton King, pretty good blocker, some strong hands. What do you see the outcome of Dalton King there?
So with Dalton King, we're talking about another versatile player. He played at a variety of positions over at Virginia Tech. He played some fullback. He played tight end. He even played some tailback as well. As a matter of fact, Dalton King was a running back in high school. And you see some of those characteristics when he catches the ball, when he makes plays after the catch. He has those instincts to allow his blockers or to set up his blockers to, create room for him. And then, once he gets some free space, he just bangs into guys. He's a real banger after the catch. I think he'll become a fan favorite. And the other thing about him is that he could be a really good drive blocker as well. His technique is on and off, but when he stays low and he keeps his shoulders squared and wide base, he could be a really good drive blocker as well. They used him a lot on screenplays over at Virginia Tech. And I think that's primarily, that's probably his strongest point, making a lot of those plays where he's close to the line of scrimmage. A lot of those plays where, he shows block and then he goes out for the quick, little pass in the flat or something like that. So I could see him, like DeGuara, getting a lot of snaps because of his versatility and being the type of guy who could be productive, a guy who can make yards after the catch. And so never going to be a star, but I think a guy that could be an integral part of the Patriots offense going forward. And, quite frankly, that's the reason. That's another reason why you like Asiasi. I mean, what do they have out there right now? It's Matt Lacoste and Ryan Izzo. These guys. I mean, right off the bat, I think these guys, both of them, Asiasi and Keene, should be better than Lacoste and Izzo. So
yeah, they definitely should be. Can you see a situation where maybe Keene overrides Asiasi, like what we saw in Baltimore with Mark Andrews and I can't think of his name right now, where Andrews was the second guy off the board, but it turned out to be the better tight end. Could that happen with Keene and Asiasi, or do you see a clear distinction between Asiasi and Keene?
Well, yeah, I mean that's always possible where Keene becomes that, and you also have to see what happens with Cam Newton. I mean, a lot of times quarterbacks get comfortable with one particular receiver, so maybe he'll just getting the ball out to Dalton Keene a little bit more, or maybe here's the other thing, how quickly are they going to pick up the offense? Yeah. Maybe as much as we like Asiasi in terms of his physical upside, let's face it, Asiasi only had one really good year in college. He started out at Michigan, then he went to UCLA, transferred over to UCLA, and he had that one really good year. But let's just suppose Asiasi is a little slow off the bat, where he doesn't pick up the offense. Maybe he doesn't pick up all of his assignments. I think Dalton Keene in that situation, Dalton Keene could actually supersede Asiasi as the top tight end in New England.
Gotcha. And then number 8, we have someone who basically has the position to himself. Jeremy Sprinkle's there, but Jeremy Sprinkle is definitely more of a blocker than a receiver. And Randy Moss's son, Thaddeus Moss, who's a great athlete, good blocker, can catch almost everything, but went as an undrafted free agent. Why the decline? I mean, I know he had the injury, but I think that was kind of a surprise that he went, not even drafted. What are your thoughts on him?
Well, yes, the injury had a big impact on him not being drafted. I was kind of surprised as well. I mean, this is a guy who made plays against, major teams, against Clemson and teams like that. So, but what I'm looking at here with Thaddeus Moss is he's a good downfield blocker. He's a thick guy, and he's a physical guy. He knows how to run routes. He wins. He would consistently win his matchups against linebackers and safeties over the middle, over at LSU. So I'm thinking maybe one reason why he went undrafted is because he's just not that explosive. He's got average speed. He's not a big play tight end, but he's somebody with I would say more short area quickness than deep speed. So I would say he doesn't have the upside of like some of these other players that we mentioned, but I think he's solid, and I think he lands in a great situation. I mean, who does he have in front of him? You mentioned Jeremy Sprinkle. He's the number one tight end, but he averaged under 2 receptions per game last year. And then you have Richard Rodgers and who's the other guy? Logan Thomas, the converted quarterback. So I think that Thaddeus Moss could probably leapfrog at least 2 of these guys in his first year and be a major contributor. So now, it remains to be seen. Now, the Reds, Washington, whatever they're going to be called, do they decide to draft a tight end next year in the first, second, or third round? And then, Moss just eternally becomes this, tight end too. I could see that happening as well. So as for dynasty purposes, I would say that, Moss is more of a tight end too going forward. I don't ever see him being a stud or a go-to guy, but just being a solid player who's going to see snaps and is going to catch, I say in a good year, he could probably catch about 40 to 50 balls, 500 yards, and 5 or 6 touchdowns. That I could see. But, just because you see the name Moss, right. I wouldn't expect, a lot of highlight reel plays. I don't think he's that type of athlete.
Now, you mentioned Richard Rodgers. Richard Rodgers was formerly of Green Bay, correct?
Yes.
Now, what anything out of him as far as fantasy goes, receiver, or do you think he's just one of those guys that bounce around the league and it's not going to be any kind of threat or anything?
Richard Rodgers is just, he's a player who's got pretty decent hands, but just doesn't have any juice to him. He's a slow tight end. And so, you might see one game out of him where he'll catch 6 balls, and then for the next month, you'll get a big 0 out of him. So, yeah, I mean, Richard Rodgers, to me, I think if he hangs on as the 3rd tight end, I think that's probably the best that he can do.
Gotcha. And then number 9, we have Hunter Bryant in Detroit, college, Washington. He's a move tight end. He's not really much of a blocker, if at all. What do you see him? I mean, definitely T.J. Hawkinson is a big hurdle to leap.
Yeah.
So, what are your prognosis out of Mr. Bryant here?
I see a big slot receiver. He's a Trey Burton type, I believe. He played in college at Washington at 239 pounds. I know he did put on some weight for the combine, put on another 10 pounds, but yeah, I mean, he can post up defenders. He moves well. He can play in the slot. He does those things, but he's limited. I mean, he can't play in line. He won't contribute much as a perimeter blocker either. So I think that if you find a role for him as a Trey Burton, like the way he played with the Philadelphia Eagles, every once in a while they put him in there for certain packages. I think that's where Hunter Bryant is going to excel. But as far as him ever being a full-time tight end, I don't see that. He's going to need Hawkinson to get hurt for him to get any major time in that offense. And Hawkinson being as young as he is, and the fact that he was a first-round pick, top 10 overall, I don't see that happening. So and I know that Jesse James is on that team too. So maybe he leaps over Jesse James by next year. But as far as him being a full-time player, I don't anticipate that happening anytime soon.
Yeah, as you mentioned, just T.J. Hawkinson himself, even though he had a down year, they're going to give him all the opportunities in the world just because they drafted him in the top 10. Yeah. And then so you don't see, very rarely do you see, if at all, 2 tight ends from one team. You have Ertz and Goddard, but that's probably about it. Extensive list as you're going to get from 2 tight ends. And go ahead.
Yeah, no, and then at number 10, we got Colby Parkinson, who was drafted in the 4th round by the Seattle Seahawks. I think what hurts Parkinson is that he's already out with an injury. He has a Jones fracture, which I think could maybe quite possibly wipe out his rookie season. But there are some things to like about him. You know, he's 6'7", has a huge wingspan, and he's quick off the snap, and he's light on his feet. So for a guy that huge, he moves very well. You like that about him. Some of his cons are he's got long, skinny legs, and that's going to be hard for him to be an effective blocker. I think if everything works out well for Mr. Parkinson once he returns from his injury, once he recovers, I think his upside is maybe being maybe a poor man's version of Coby Fleener. I can possibly see that. But, you know, he also has a lot of guys at the tight end position in Seattle right now. You know, they got Greg Olsen, they got Jacob Hollister, they still got Luke Wilson there, you know, the local
Will Disley and so many tight ends.
Yeah, Will Disley, right? Will Disley's there, and so he's going to have a lot of competition. So I think the Seahawks are going to take it slow with Parkinson. They might put him on the IR for his rookie season, but I think, you know, in 2021, maybe with Olsen out of the picture, he retires and Disley probably gets hurt again. I think at that point, I think he'll have more of an opportunity to carve out a role for himself with the Seahawks.
Yeah, I don't know what the Seahawks tight ends are doing, but I think they should definitely stay away from the injury water. I mean, it's like every tight end that plays, that goes into that offense gets hurt somehow, some way. They all do well, too. I mean, even Hollister, that nobody even heard of last year, comes around and does well when Will Disley goes down. And I don't think Greg Olsen's going to survive a full season. Yeah, they got tons of tight ends, and they're probably all going to be taking a role somewhere just because injuries are just amounting for that team. And then they went and they also drafted Stephen Sullivan out of LSU and then Bryson Hopkins. I was wondering if you can cover those guys a little bit.
Yeah, Stephen Sullivan, huge guy, 6'6", and the arms. You talk about length. He has 35 1/8 inch arms. And has very good quickness, superior quickness and speed, but the production just wasn't there at LSU. In his last year, I think he only had 12 receptions.
Yeah.
And so he is a project, but a project with some real physical abilities, physical skills. Now, you know, if he wasn't able to really, you know, earn himself some real playing time at LSU, you have to wonder, you know, is the work ethic there? Does he pick up things quickly or not? So those are some concerns with him because, you know, from a physical standpoint, you know, comparing him to Thaddeus Moss, you know, Stephen Sullivan, I mean, he hasn't beat pretty much in every category in terms of measurables. But, you know, but yet Thaddeus Moss was the guy that, you know, got all the balls thrown to him, and he was the more productive player. So he's a project. But, you know, somebody that, you know, maybe in 3 years, 2 years, you know, he could be somebody that makes the team as the tight end 3, maybe. And you know, and then who knows what happens from there. So, but yeah, Stephen Sullivan is definitely somebody to keep an eye on. And then the other, And then the other player, Bryson Hopkins, was taken by the Rams. He too has got a lot of work to do if he wants to see any playing time there. Another big receiver type, not much of a blocker. And the thing about Hopkins is you see him make some of these spectacular plays, but then you also see him make some plays that just make you scratch your head. A lot of drops. He gets a lot of drops on balls he should be catching in his sleep. And then he also shows a little hesitancy when he has to go over the middle. He hears footsteps, and that's not a good thing. That is not a good thing when you're talking about tight ends. You know, you should make a lot of your bread and butter plays over the middle, and that's one of the issues that he's going to overcome. So, I like the physical tools, but will he ever be a player that's going to have a long career in the NFL? I have my doubts.
Yeah, it's one of those things. And then also, you know, I think Everett's going to be out from the Rams next year, so he might find a spot with this 12 personnel that the Rams are going to run. But as you said, it's a long road for him, and you know he'll be on the waiver wire. So if he ever does something, he'll be someone that you could easily grab. I know you got things to do, so I'll let you go. Thank you, Ralph, for coming on again this week and next week. I don't know. We'll have to figure out what we want to do. Biggest breakouts, busts, whatever. We'll figure it out.
Sure.
And so everybody subscribe, ring that bell for our updates. It helps us grow this thing. And take care, Ralph. I hope you have a good rest of your week.
Thanks, buddy. Talk to you soon.
Right. Talk to you soon, bud.
All right, bye.
Bye.